Hi guys, this is Ms. Howington here at Research Triangle High School. Today we are talking about disease and epidemiology as it relates to the AP Environmental Science curriculum. So the first thing you need to know is what is a disease. So a disease is any impaired function of the body with a characteristic set of symptoms. So like when you go to the doctor because you don't feel good, that means that your body is somehow impaired, and they use those characteristic set of symptoms to figure out what kind of disease you might have. So we can classify diseases in a couple of different ways. We can classify it as infectious or non-infectious diseases. So infectious diseases are caused by infectious agents, also known as pathogens, which you guys should have talked about a little bit about in biology. So all sorts of things from parasites to fungi to bacteria and viruses. Within infectious diseases, those pathogens are going to have to be passed some way. Usually it can be passed one of a number of different ways. So usually there are three main ways that infectious diseases are transmitted. We can have people-to-people transmission, so the disease is going to go from one person to the other. That can happen a number of different ways. It can happen by like respiratory aerosols, so the little droplets that come out when you sneeze could get in somebody else's mouth or nose, and that could be transferred that way. It could be transmitted as like a sexually transmitted disease, or lots of different things. Infectious diseases can also be transmitted from animals to people, either by a vector like a mosquito, or directly from an animal itself. So like when there was the big swine flu scare, we're worried about flu virus from pigs transferring to people. And then also infectious diseases can also be transferred via food. So it could be from bacteria that exists, or a virus or something that is already in a food, or a parasite that's already in a food and it's just not killed in preparing it, or it could be an illness that is from a person that is sick and they touch the food and then the food goes to you. So many different ways. And then we have non-infectious diseases, which are not caused by pathogens. These tend to be things like cardiovascular disease or respiratory diseases like asthma. Those are usually due to genetics or environmental factors or chronic conditions or all sorts of things. So diseases can also be classified as acute or chronic. So acute diseases quickly impair body functions. So you start feeling sick really soon after you're exposed to the disease, or after you get the disease. So things like Ebola or the flu, they have really short incubation periods. So you get the virus, it hangs out in your body for like a week, 2 weeks maybe, and then you start to feel bad. And then chronic diseases are things that slowly impair your body function. So things like heart disease or cancer, they take a while to build up. So like atherosclerosis, the hardening of the arteries, it takes a long time for that plaque to build up in the arteries over time. Chronic diseases are usually due to environmental factors. So can be things like poor nutrition, and that's going to be a lot different in developing countries versus developed countries. So in the US, we have problems with obesity because we have poor diets where we eat too much. And then in developing countries, they might have issues with malnutrition that tend to lead to other diseases and developmental issues because they don't eat enough. And then also poor environmental conditions, which can also be widely varying from country to country. And then lastly, epidemics and pandemics. So when a pathogen causes a rapid increase in the instances of disease, we call that an epidemic. So if there is an outbreak in an area, so like a cholera outbreak in London might have been referred to as an epidemic. A pandemic is when an epidemic occurs over a very large geographic region. So when we talk about the HIV/AIDS outbreak, we refer to that as a pandemic because we can find cases of HIV/AIDS in every country on Earth. And then epidemiology is the branch of medicine that deals with the incidence, distribution, and control of diseases and other factors relating to health. They study a lot of how diseases are transmitted, how we can stop the transmission, and that sort of thing. So you're going to watch another video that explains epidemiology and the root of epidemiology in a little bit more detail. All right, guys, we'll talk about this later.